Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be doing my VCT EMEA Stage 2 player rankings. I'm going to go through every player in VCT EMEA and rank them within their roles. If you guys enjoy, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Really helps me out. As well as go check out my Twitter where I'll be updating these every week. Just posting like the spreadsheet that I have and whether players are moving up and down depending on the week. So again, if you guys enjoy, go check that out. Also go check out my Twitch where I stream sometimes on there, I guess. Not a ton, but I do stream sometimes. But regardless, go check that out. And yeah, let's get right into it. So we'll start here with the Duelist rankings, where we have CNED at number 1, and I think that's pretty clear. I know Foot wasn't too great in terms of their Shanghai form, but I thought consistently over the whole course of the EMEA regular season and through playoffs that they were probably the best team in terms of just consistent form. But obviously, Heretics and Fnatic peaked higher, Fnatic having won, and Heretics having made the finals of Shanghai. I think CNED is pretty clearly the best duelist in EMEA right now. He can play Jet, he can play Raze, he can play Chamber for his team. Whereas, like, Miniboo can't really play Raze, can't really play Jet too much, or hasn't done that. I mean, he has played Raze, but, like, it hasn't been good, in my opinion. And when he played Jet in the off season, it was really bad, like really, really bad, to the point where I had him as my 11th ranked duelist coming in, which was certainly a take. But yeah. And then Durka at number 3, I have him moving up here just because like the agent flexibility, he can play literally any duelist you want him to, and Chamber. He could probably play some flex roles as well if you needed him to. And he's just like a really great player, getting better in terms of the firepower throughout the course of the season, even into Shanghai. Didn't perform as well. I just think Durka's really, really good. But I don't think he's like best duelist in the EMEA very clearly right now. Then you have Artis, who I do have a tier below this top tier, which, kind of thinking about it, doesn't seem the most fair. I understand that like he has in the past been the best duelist in the EMEA, but right now I don't think he's quite there in terms of the Raze play. But he does exactly what he's like needed to do for this team in terms of playing the KO, playing the other roles when Zippon is playing the Raze. So I'm not going to knock him too much for that. But I also just don't think he's been dominant enough to justify being in this top tier. And then same deal with Martine. He just feels like maybe a mini Durka, if that makes sense. Just being able to play any duelist this team needs him to at a fairly high level. And yeah, just being a great player. I don't know. Like, there's not a ton to say about Martine. He does have room to grow in terms of just like consistency. And you'd like to see that before ranking him even higher than this, but I still think he's one of the top duelists. Then you have Runner, who I think started to play better towards the end of the split. I think his start to the split was pretty bad, especially that that Navi game where he just got shut down in showers like so many rounds in a row on bind. But I think, yeah, again, towards the end of the split, he started to heat up a little bit more and was, at least play style wise, a little bit more consistent than Kiko. I think Kiko had a lot of mistakes that he made. Runner did a little bit less of that. So I think Runner has more room to grow, and I think will be better down the line. You just haven't seen it yet with him, so you wanna wait before even including him in conversations with Artis and Martine right now. And Kiko at number 7, staying around this spot. I don't think I've barely moved him from this spot. He has had games where he's been absolutely dominant, one of the best players in EMEA. I'll say one of the best duelists in EMEA in terms of that. But the amount of mistakes he makes is just too many. He needs to cut down on that. He needs to stop like over pushing, over peaking. He loses his team quite a few rounds throughout the split in terms of just him kind of pushing a weak side on defense on his own or something like that with an op and just dying, or like going too fast than an exec or something like that. What he really feels like to me is like a worse version of Oxy, where like the decision making is actually somehow worse, but also he doesn't like shoot as hard as Oxy does either. So I don't know. He's not terrible, but he's not up to the standard that I think everybody else holds him to. Then you have Kushner, Takas, Purpo, and Camo. I really don't have a ton to say about any of these guys. I think most of them are solid players. I think Camo is kind of clearly the worst one here. Camo and Purpo, at least. You could pick between those two. But I do believe in Purpo a little bit. I liked what I saw in terms of his flex play in Tier 2. I'd like to see him continue playing that, but I guess they want Fatino on flex. Don't get why, but just how it's got to be. Takas and Kushner, I think, are just generally fine most of the time. And then Camo, just like, he has the like consistency in terms of being good most of the time. But like he's never like great or anything. He's barely ever the top frag for this team, which I know stats don't really matter in that sense, but yeah, just not in a good spot to like set his team over the edge, I guess, is kind of where I'm trying to go with that. Like there's not the upside in Camo, but there is still the downside, I think. I realize now that I should probably explain how these tiers work and what the changes in terms of like the plus or minus stuff are. So the tiers are each color, so like the yellow, the green, the blue, the orange, and the pink. I think, yeah, there was no red one here. And it just signifies like a player in a tier above another player is like, I think, pretty clearly and inarguably better than a player in a tier below them. But like the players within a tier with each other are pretty interchangeable. Like if you want to have Mini Boo or Durka over CNED, I don't really care too much. But personally, that's just the way that I would order it. Because there's some of these tiers that are just very like one way or the other. Like this like green tier in Smokes with Mystic, Shao, Garbino, and Sender and Brave. I think that one's very interchangeable. And you could keep going with other ones. I think there's less of them in EMEA, but there's definitely some in Pacific and Americas that are that way. But I just wanted to explain it just so people know, because I got that asked a lot. And then the pluses and minuses are from my last week of the regular season. So this is changes from playoffs and from Shanghai. So yeah, I think that clears up everything. Then we got moving on to flex here. We're going to start with Woot, who I think was my MVP of Shanghai. I haven't really thought about that particularly too much, just because, I mean, there were so many close players. Like you could pick him, Texture, Charon, Meteor. I mean, I was watching a little bit of Plat Chat before this, and Akilio said that he picked Munchkin, which I think is pretty fair, honestly. But personally, I just think Woot's performance on Duelist was one of the most unbelievable Duelist performances we've seen at an international event to date. So yeah, he's just incredible on both the Raze and the Jet. And he's been pretty good on the flex. I don't think he's been quite as good as he was on the Duelist on the flex, but you want to see more of the flex to like actually know whether or not I'd agree with that. He also was helped out a lot by the Patty and the Rian's util, which is why he's in the same tier as Zipon right now. Also, he was not playing this role, so you want to see a little bit more from Woot just to know that he is a top tier flex player. But right now, I'd honestly have him as the #1 Duelist in EMEA if he was the one playing Duelist. Then Zipon, just historically one of the better flex players in EMEA. Just, I mean, he's so damn good. He can play the Raze, he can play the KO at a high level, he can play, I mean, he plays pretty much whatever this team asks him to. I just don't think his Sky is quite there. Also, he doesn't play too much Viper or anything like that, so it's like, with him below Woot. But I still think he's in the same tier just because he's been so good for so long that I can't really rate him too far below where Woot is right now. And then Chronicle, who I considered moving up a tier, but for right now, I think I'm going to keep him here just because I think he's probably in the same tier as where Yampy is. And also his Shanghai performance wasn't too great. Like he was really good in playoffs, I think, for Fnatic. He was much better than he was at kickoff, I'll say that. which I had dropped him down originally because of. But yeah, he's just again a player that just plays whatever this team needs and is very solid at it. I just don't know if he's going to be playing at that elite level that he once would play at, like when he was on Gambit or something, which I think was probably his peak, honestly, because I think that was better than um, Fnatic last year. Uh, Even then, like when he was playing the Sova for Gambit and stuff like that, I think that was even better. But still, just kind of slowly declining. So you'd hope he can turn that around for Fnatic, and I think that's the main thing for them because I do think they're very good at every other role right now. Then you have Yampy, who I think doesn't get talked about as one of the better players in EMEA as much. I think his like initiator and like flex play has been a lot better as of late. His Viper's really good. His Sky is really, really good. And his Chamber is, dare I say, best in the world right now. Um, who would I even have over him? Maybe Cryo. Um, Maybe like I think Benji if he played Chamber might be better. CNED if he, maybe CNED. Maybe I'd go CNET over Yampy, but that's very close. Just a great opper as well. So I don't want to see him on duelist roles necessarily because of that. Um, but he's still very, very good. And just I mean, probably Liquid's best player. I don't see a world where you don't argue that. Maybe some people think Kiko is, but I just don't agree. Then you have Cracks and Shreks both dropping down a tier here. They were originally in this Chronicle Yampy tier, and now they're back down into their own, just like tier with each other. And I think they're just two flex players that are very like more like aggressive minded, I guess, is how you put that. Where they can play the Raze, they can play the KO, they can play. I mean, I think Trex can play the Sky. I believe. I think Trex has played more stuff for Vitality, but Krax has been better at the small sample size of stuff that he's played, like the Gecko, the KO, and the Raze. I think Krax is really, really good at those Asians, which is why I have him over Trex. But Trex can play more of the stuff like Viper, Astra. I think he's played a little bit of Sentinel for this team as well, maybe. He's just played so much stuff and he's been really good at it. Then I'm going to move to Fatinho, Natank, Starzo, and Pora. Um, I wanted to move Fatinho up, but honestly, I think he and Natank are pretty in a pretty similar spot. Flex players that are more duelist type players where they play more like, I mean, Fatinho will play the Yaru, Natank will play the Raze and the Phoenix. I mean, Fatinho also plays the Raze, but point stands like they're not as good on their like initiator roles per se. I think Fatinho would honestly be better on like a Sentinel-esque role. Maybe a transition similar to what Leaf did for Cloud or no, Cloud9 for G2. He was on Cloud9 before when he was playing the Duelist, to be fair. But regardless, I think you could argue those two are in a separate tier than Starzo and Starzo and Tank, than Starzo and Pora. But I think those two had moments where they were shooting really well and have played a lot of stuff for their teams. So I don't know. That's really splitting hairs there. I think you could argue maybe Starzo is more established than Fatinho or Natank on this role, which is why they're in the same tier. And then I think Pora should be in the same tier as Starzo. And then Magnum's just not a good individual. Um, Not too much to argue there, honestly. Then moving on to Initiator, we'll do this back to back just because I think it's a pretty similar conversation with most of these players. You got Leo number one pretty clearly. Not going to move too much from that. Rienz is dropping down a tier mainly because Leo is going up a tier, I think. I think Leo just established that he is the best initiator in the world right now, and it's not really that close, honestly. But Rienz is an incredible player. Actually, looking at this now, I probably should have dropped Narrate down a tier next to Cloud, just because I don't think Narrate's stage 2 was that good. Especially when you got towards like, I think it was the Navi game for this team. Let me bring up Carmine Corp. Yeah, it was this Navi game where he did not play very well, in my opinion, even though his stats were pretty good. His stats were good against Koi, which I think he played well in that game. Against Heretics, not really. I don't think he played that great. Fnatic, no, and Foot, no. Like once you get towards the end of the season here, he really started to have some stinkers. Um, you'd hope that he can kind of get back to what he was at the beginning of the year, but I really don't see that happening. I was kind of low on him coming in, and yeah, I mean, a lot of the, I mean, I guess we haven't really seen it play out past stage two, but I think Carmine Core is going to take a dip, uh, and so will Narrate. Then Cloud, just a really consistently good initiator player for Giants. I don't have a ton of words to say about him. He is like a worse version of Leo. And yeah, again, not too much to say about that, but he is very good, honestly. Like, I think he's pretty clearly a tier. Like, these top four are pretty clearly above the next, like, rest of the players. Then you have Kix and Reezy, who I think are two just young, improving initiator players. Again, not a ton to say about these two guys just because they're young, they're inconsistent. Sometimes their utility isn't too great. But you definitely see the mechanics and the potential with these two guys. And you just want to see more and see them improve within their teams. And then Mr. Fallen, who I think is a pretty good individual on the IGL, moving up a spot. Maybe this is because his calling is good, and I just like to, and I overrate the players that have good calling. I do that sometimes with individuals. Like I think Boostio, I really overrated coming into the year. I had like at the number 2 Sentinel spot for 100 Thieves, but regardless. And then these are, I think, yeah, 4 IGLs at the bottom here who just are not great. You could argue Angel's the tier below, but honestly, I think he has enough pop off moments that he belongs in this tier with these guys. Maybe Enzo should be above, but honestly, I'm not going to talk too much about that because it is 4 IGLs and who the hell cares? And I realized while I was recording that initiator and flex segment that the fucking plus minus column on the smokes tab was wrong, so I just fixed that in case you're wondering why this changed. But I still have Shin and Ada Captain in this top tier. I think Shin was Karma Core's best player throughout the whole like split. I mean, and throughout the whole year, honestly. Um, Ada Captain, I think, has just been pretty consistently the best smokes player in EMEA throughout like probably since champs. Honestly, just because I mean the other EMEA teams haven't been as good. Xiao is playing smokes, which is certainly a decision from Navi. Like somebody tell them that they won a fucking major with Xiao on Initiator and Angel on smokes. I don't think it's that difficult, but for them clearly it is. But regardless, I think Ada Captain's very good. Shin very solid as well. Mystic, I think, is a little over aggressive at times on the Omen, but overall just has enough pop off plays and is consistent enough game to game to the point where you can't really criticize it too much. Like it feels a lot like Tenz's Omen, which is a very good thing, honestly. And I think he's been better throughout the whole year, honestly, than Tenz. Like throughout stage one, I think he was better than Tenz. Obviously, throughout kickoff and I mean, okay, maybe you could argue kickoff in Madrid matters more, which I actually agree because Tenz was so much better than Mystic during those times. But also Mystic was very good. So I think he's a very similar player to Tenz, at least in like a similar line right now. You just want to see Tenz get back to what that was and Mystic stay at the level that he is pretty much. And then Xiao, I said it, he's just not great on the smokes roll, but he's still a great player. So I'm hard pressed to rank him too low here, honestly. But if Navi come out and switch Xiao and Angel's roles, I think this is probably one of the better teams in EMEA, if not top two. I think Heretics are pretty clearly one. I'm spoiling all of my power rankings right now, but I don't know, I still believe it. And then Grabinho, I think is Koi's best player by far. And it's not even like he's a great fragger or anything. He's just a super solid support smokes player. Just throws great utility for his teammates, and honestly has been fragging a little bit better than I thought he would coming into the year. So that's a good sign. And yeah, I think he's very solid. Sender, he's shooting sometimes when he's playing IGL or on this IGL role and plays smokes to a decent level. So I threw him in this tier. And then I think you could also argue that Brave might be outside of this tier. Like you could argue Boo, Brave, Sender. are all in a tier together, but I would still keep it in that order, regardless. Then you have Cadaver coming in, who's new. I don't know much about him, so I'm going to leave him down here, but his stats looked good in tier 2. So, whatever that means. Like, he was pretty clearly their best player based on stats of his tier 2 team. I don't remember what it was called. I didn't spell his name right, did I? Oh no, I did. Why did it? Okay, whatever. Yeah, for DVM Esport, he was top frag for the most recent game. Oh, he bottom frag that game. Whatever. He was. He looked like their best player based on stats. Was pretty much what it came down to. I'm gonna leave him in tier with Boaster here, and the reason Boaster is so high as an individual is I still think he has some like clutch moments and can win clutches for Fnatic. Um, but I would very much expect Cadaver to get out of this tier. I just, again, haven't seen Cadaver play ever, so I'm going to leave him down here for now. And then once he proves that he is a good player or better than where he's ranked, then he will move up. And then Redgar at the bottom. Not too much to say about that. Now we have our Sentinel rankings where I still have Alpha at number 1. I think his whole 2023 season going into now, his season so far, I think, started off pretty poor for his level. But now that he's starting to heat up towards the end of playoffs in Shanghai, I think he is still the number 1 Sentinel player in EMEA. I think Benji Fishy is very quickly catching up at number 2, who I was kind of hot and cold on during the regular season of EMEA. I didn't think he was too great during that portion of the season. But once it got to playoffs, once it got to Shanghai, he was incredible. So I think that's kind of a 1A, 1B conversation, depending on how recency biased you want your rankings to be. I am very doing this based on history, which is why Leo is in a tier of his own, why CNET is still number 1, why Alpha is still number 1. And there will be some other rankings that kind of lend into that. But regardless, moving on to Sugetsu and Nats, who, again, historically, 2 of the best Sentinel players in EMEA. And I think Sugetsu had slightly better of a season than Nats. Maybe it's because Nats was on a worse team, which is why I have Nats lower. But just 2, I mean, very similar storylines for them. I don't think they're similar styles whatsoever, honestly. I think both are still very hard lurkers. You'd like to see Nats play a bit more Killjoy, honestly, and help his team out a little bit more. But honestly, if he's more comfortable on the Cypher on maps like Ascent, or, I mean, Haven's coming back into the pool like that, maps like that, I think he could be very, very good on. But I don't know. You're really splitting hairs between those 2. And then I think Yedije has been very good for Foot. I just don't think he's quite been like that top tier of Sentinel. And I think the 2 guys above him have more of the history behind them to kind of lend to Sugetsu and Nats being over him. Then to the next tier, you have Safe, Thomasy, and Elite. 3 very good Sentinel players. And again, I just think Safe has the history behind him of being the best duelist in the EMEA last year. Tamazi, who has gone to an international event. And then Elite, who hasn't really done too much in terms of like winning yet. But regardless, all 3 have still been very, very good for their teams. I think you could argue Safe has been the worst individual, but I think I still believe in Safe. I'm really upset that he's retiring. He's a fun personality while also being a great player, just playing the wrong role, I think. Like, there's been a lot of duelist players switching over to these more supportive roles, be it Woot, Yampy. I think Cracks played duelist at some point. Trex did, definitely. Fatinho did. The Tank is pretty much a duelist player. Narrate played duelist. I think Reezy played duelist as well. Shin played a little bit of duelist for Carmine Core. I swear there was more. Maybe not for Smokes. Benji played some duelist before. Alpha played some duelist before. Yedije's played some duelist for Foot. Safe played duelist. Thomasy played duelist. And that's all I know about for right now. But I just think moving him off of Duelist was just weird because he was a great Opper, great Jet, great Raze, great Neon. Like he was doing everything at such a high level, and moving him off of that role just seems like a troll. But he wanted to do it, so. But yeah, Tomasi was also very, very good, and Elite was also very, very good. So I could see those two moving above Safe in stage 2 here when Safe is planning to retire and maybe like takes a little bit of the foot off the gas, but we'll just have to see. Then Hoodie, Whaler, Shados, also three pretty good Sentinel players. I think Shados is a really good player, just playing the wrong role as well. He should be on that more like Initiator flex stuff. And I think Hoodie is just the most established Sentinel player, and I think he actually did take a step up in terms of individual play when he switched over to the Sentinel, so that was good to see. And then Whalers hasn't played a ton of the Sentinel. I know he played Cypher, I think it was on Sunset, which is probably why they decided to make this move for Kadavra specifically, but yeah, still didn't play too great when he played the Smokes in stage 1, so you want to see him improve and prove that he's a good player as well. So yeah, I feel like these Sentinel rankings feel really good to me, but maybe some people won't like these. Maybe people got mad at the other things. I don't know, maybe like rate being too low, Rian's being too low, I guess. I don't know. I've seen people say call Leo a baiter and shit, but I don't know. That was just stupid to me. Moving on to the IGLs now, though. And as I said, last up we have IGL, where I still have Boaster number 1, Mr. Fallen number 2, and Angel number 3. I think the 3 most established players on this IGL role in EMEA, pretty clearly as well, I think. Boaster, I still think is number 1, despite Fnatic struggling a little bit this year. They still won EMEA. They still, like, played the game at Shanghai, I guess. Like, they weren't great there. I don't actually remember. Did they win a game at Shanghai? I think they went 0-2, right? In playoffs? They did, yeah. They lost to Foot. Or, I mean, I don't know. I still think Boaster's calling's been good, but his individual play has been so bad as of late that it's just leading to him getting criticized more than he really should be. Fallen, I think, is kind of a good blend of both on that Initiator. Angel, at times it's good, at times it's bad in terms of the individual play, and I still think it's the same deal for the calling, honestly. You'd just like to see him play more normal comps and Navi become more of a normal team, and then Angel to, I don't know, just play into the meta a little bit more and things that like more teams are doing. I think he just, I don't know if he tries to like overcomplicate things or whatever, but this team, like, it just seems like they're kind of scrambled sometimes to do things, and that's not the best. But then Boo, who I had rated really low at one point during the season, and he's had some really low lows as a caller. And I don't think Heretic's style is particularly like great in terms of calling, like mid rounding and everything like that. But I still think he brings a lot to the team, which is why I have him number 4. And he just made an international grand final as the IGL, so how bad can he really be? But then I have Sender. I don't know. I don't have too much to say about Boo because I don't want to sound like a hater, but he's also not the best IGL in the world. Like he's not great. Then you have Sender, who is also fine. Like I think Sender is like more of a mid rounder, and I think Vitality play a more normal, like, and more consistent mid rounding style, I guess. Maybe not style, but like they're more of a consistent mid rounding team, which is why I prefer Sender. I don't prefer Sender over Boo, but like he's in the same tier, I guess is how you say that. Um, Again, these EMEA IGLs are weird because it's like these top 4 and then a whole bunch of mid below that. Like Pora, Enzo, Shadow, Bayaz, all had some success at some points in the season. I think Enzo was largely fine, and I think he might be the guy that people disagree with the most. Um, but Pora had some really good moments towards the end of the regular season on BBL. I think Shadow was largely okay on that role. And then Bayaz, again, had some good moments on the IGL, but wasn't too great. And then Magnum was bad on this role, specifically throughout split one. During kickoff, I think it looked serviceable, his calling. But since then, it just has not been good enough. And then Redgar, just, I don't know, he's just been struggling the whole year. He's been struggling since fucking Tokyo last year, so I still don't. I'm still like 1 foot in, 1 foot out on Redgar, I guess. Like, I don't think he's terrible, but also he hasn't done anything in like over a year. So you need to see him start to get actual results out of his calling and actually like look kind of okay in most of the time or most of the time. But maybe he just needs that elite team around him like Gambit was. So I don't know. Regardless, that is the end of the video. I talked about every player here. Thank God. Um, I think this one was shorter than my Pacific one, which was like 28 minutes ish, but I'd have to actually look, and I don't feel like doing that right now. So, regardless, like and subscribe if you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you guys thought of the rankings in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.